Absolutely. Thank you very much, Haley. Now, of course, we have a 3D laser scanned circuit to race around today, much like the real circuit, just down the road a couple of hours from here in Paris. And Alain Meniche is driving the BWT lead car, the H24, to get a feel of what it's like in the virtual world.
Yeah, coming up into the Dunlop chicane in the virtual and the real world is a fantastic sight, doesn't matter what it is. You've got to still try and attack these curbs, but not going too much over them. Then you dip down through the S's, and it's a sensational feeling as the car plummets down the hill. Into the S's though, S de la Forêt, you have to be careful with the rear end. Rear end stability on this, the virtual H24, is also a little bit sensitive. The drivers are going to have to be careful there before coming out towards Tetre Rouge. Still, without doubt, one of the most important corners on the circuit. Through trying to carry as much apex speed so you carry that momentum all the way down the Mulsanne straight.
Well, while Alan continues, let's now go over to Monaco, where we join their Serene Highnesses. Let's stay in the studio. We're joined by the president of the ACO with Haley. Is Pierre Fillon.
Yes, let's stay in the studio. Here I am, of course.
But Ollie Rowland, after his stop, down to 9th place, and that two-seat car was in third early on. Porsche versus Ferrari here.
Event virtually.
No, at this time, in a normal world, we should have been on the grid in Le Mans with 250,000 people around us. Unfortunately, the virus decided something different, and we had to postpone the 24 hours of Le Mans in September. But we know all our fans are very frustrated, and so we had this crazy idea to organize this virtual 24 hours, and it's big surprise, so attractive for the drivers and manufacturers and fans. So this is the idea.
So we have Alain Meniche over there in the sim, of course, of the Mission H24, a car that you're actually familiar with because last week you gave it a test drive at the Bugatti circuit. Can you tell us what that experience was like and why you've chosen it to be the pace and lead car here at the 24 Hours Le Mans Virtual?
For me, it was a very great moment because I was the first gentleman driver able to drive this car, and this car is a hydrogen car. And it's the first hydrogen car of the history, and for us is the future of mobility. So Mission H24 is a partnership between Green GT and the SEO to develop the technology and to promote this technology.
So Alan, how are you doing over there?
Yeah, pretty good. Come down into Mulsanne. I've got to tell you that it's exactly like in the real car. If you brake that little bit too late, then you lock up the fronts and the gravel trap is there to greet you. So I just had two wheels in the gravel as we came round there. Now down into Arnage, the slowest corner on the circuit. And oddly, I think one of the most difficult because it sort of drags you into braking too late, going too quickly in. But what you do need to do is, Haley, is get a clean run out and the run down towards the Porsche curves.
Thank you so much, Toyota, for everything you do.
Porsche curves coming up now, they're the big brave ones. That's the ones where you've got to take a deep breath. This is where the lap time was made in qualifying, in this final sector. Pole position in LMP2 and also in GTE. The difference was coming into here and throwing the car in. You roll the car in. You've got to sort of coax the car, tease it through the first part, and then now the circuit really narrows up and your vision suddenly gets very tight into the second left-hander, and then the long right at karting. Here trying to keep close to that curve, not to run too wide. In the night, this is a very difficult one for the lights. And then through the left-hander of karting, as you now fly down towards the final chicane, the Ford chicane, the place where you can really make the difference, or you can make a big mistake, Haley.
Well, let's go now to Monaco to join Sandrine Negre. She's with their Serene Highnesses, Prince Albert and Princess Charlene of Monaco, to tell us a little bit more about their Strong Together project.
Good afternoon and welcome at the Automobile Club of Monaco. Your Serene Highness, thank you very much to be here in live with us. You've just seen the hydrogen safety car. What do you think about the use of this kind of car?
Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here and to see this exciting race. The LPMH2G car is a beautiful car, as you've seen. It's a hydrogen car, and it's part of a project between the H24 project team and the Automobile Club de l'Ouest to present this car as the safety car and as the leading car for the 24-hour virtual Le Mans race. And so this is very exciting because, as you know, the hydrogen technology is really coming about now, and it's going to help the energy transition as well as the electric vehicles, and I think this is very promising for the future. And we will see
all the way through. But
this hydrogen car and the Michelin European endurance circuit, and I think this is a wonderful step toward zero emission car competitions in the future. And I think we will be seeing more of these types of cars in the future. And I think, and one last thing, that the H24 team teamed up with Total to have the first, and it's a world first, a temporary hydrogen supply unit. And so I think that this is very exciting and very promising for the future.
Very much. Highness, can you now introduce us to the Strong Together team and especially to the racing drivers?
Yes, absolutely. I would like to introduce Francesco Castellacci, who's currently warming up. We spoke to Felipe Massa, he's in Brazil, Tony Miller, and Jean. Okay, so there's a team.
And the crew. Massage, something to top up the fluids you've lost, a bit of food, get a bit of rest if you can. If you are a driver at home, you've got to go through the same routine, otherwise by tomorrow afternoon there's going to be nothing left of you.
We've certainly got slightly different driving times, but the one thing that is real is the fact that mentally I think this is more tiring than necessarily driving the real race itself. The real race is very emotionally tiring because it is the pinnacle of the year. We'll see that again in September when it happens, that you'll feel that whole build-up of the week. Now, the drivers have been doing that at home, but it's been slightly detached. However, mentally, for the focus and concentration, and you can see that the way that they are approaching it is in exactly the same way. You'll come back out, you'll look at your stint averages. A lot of the engineers, we've got two of the teams here in the studio with IDEC, for example, on the far side, and they've actually brought their engineer here to work with the drivers to try and bring them through it. And so they're using it as a way of developing their systems for the real world as well as actually for this particular event.
On board with the MPI Sancho number 12 machine is the battle for 23rd place. The Richard Mille Racing team right in front. That's the all-female crew. So that's Tatiana Calderon in the bottom of your shot. And how many racing drivers in their cave where the sim rig is have also got their other key tool of the trade, their bicycle. And at the top there you can see Simon Pagenaud. He's the Team Penske driver who's just ahead of that little battle, and he's got his Indy 500 winning trophies, his IndyCar winning trophies, but he's got his bicycle in there as well with him. So, you know, for the sim races as well, actually physical fitness is vital because it allows your body not to override what your mind is trying to focus on, Chris McCarthy, and that is driving these things. It's almost 100% mental.
Well, Jenson Button says that he was more tired after driving in sim racing than he was in real racing. I just want to pick up on a couple of bits of info that I've had sent through to me. So Alex Lynn crashed and got stuck, so he's been reset to pit lane. You'll see he's right down the bottom of the order now.
Great wheel-to-wheel racing in our LMP2 class. And there is one of the Rebellion Williams cars. Don't forget, no LMP1, no hybrid cars here. There are two classes for the first time at Le Mans since, I can't tell you when, probably since the 90s, when it was predominantly GTs. And we've got LMP2 cars and the GTE cars, and leaning there, Jean-Eric Verne, Arthur Rougier and Bruno Senna. Racing wheel to wheel. Well, don't forget that the Princess Charlene Foundation is raising money throughout this race weekend. It's one of the pinnacles of their fundraising season.
24 hours where you can donate through the Princess Charlene of Monaco Foundation.
And you can see the address on screen there. If you get a chance, please, they are donating all the money they're raising from this event. And there's a huge gala going on at the Automobile Club de Monaco to raise funds as well. Normally the Monaco Grand Prix is their huge fundraiser of the year. That hasn't happened, of course, in May. So they're using this highlight to raise money. You can see the address on screen. Please go and donate whatever you can afford, however little, it all adds up. And we know there will be millions of people watching throughout the 24 hours. And even €1 per person is going to make a big difference in the global fight against COVID-19. Bruno Senna in the top right-hand side of your screen. He's raced with Rebellion for a number of years, a real veteran at Le Mans. Bruno currently in 18th place, chasing down long-term friend and sparring partner Jean-Eric Verne, who's 17th for Veloce Esports 1. They've got 3 cars in the fight as well, and behind them Nico Jamin for one of Olivier Panis's cars as well. So Nico Jamin in 19th place, and again he and Bruno and Jev have raced against each other at Le Mans in World Endurance and in the European Le Mans Series as well. They're ahead of Paul-Luc Chatin for IDEC Sport, who are up to 20th place. Where did IDEC qualify? It's a little further down the grid than that. So IDEC are having a good run so far, having qualified, in fact they qualified in 16th place. Richard Bradley started the car. And watching Bruno Senna chasing through traffic. Chris, there's a few little wrinkles in the standard pit stops that, like in real world, can slow you down a little. Talk about that.
Of course, you know, there's definitely things that can happen in pit lane. Before we go into it, I just did want to say Pereira in the Project 1 has done very well. He's come up from row 5 to get into 4th, and he's about to come under pressure from Danny Juncadella, a team everyone has been talking about, the R8G Esports team, because they come in with an incredibly strong lineup with Erhan Yayovsky and Risto Capet, 2 of the top 10 drivers in esports, you have to say, and Danny Juncadella, someone who has been very busy in esports likewise. So but yes, you know, things can happen in the pit lane. We've just seen how mistakes can be made by drivers missing pit spots and then having to reverse back again. Simple mistakes, but that happens in the real world as well, and we've seen that happen at the highest level all the time.
And there can be random delays as well, like random weather. The tyre and fuel wear aren't random. If you rag the tyres, they don't last, and if you are, you know, lead foot, then you don't get the fuel economy. But you can have up to a 2-second random delay in the fueling, which should normally take 34 seconds for an LMP2 car, and you can have up to 1.6 seconds of a random delay with a tyre change as well. So in the same way that you can fumble a tyre or a wheel nut won't come off, that can happen in the virtual world. We're mixing oil and water here, different rules, different dynamics, different drivers, different teams, but the whole thing has a real smack of reality about it. Our LMP2 field whistling through past our GTE cars. Let's take a look. The lead is still a Porsche 1-2, and now Luc Hartog for Dempsey Proton in the 88 car is 6 seconds ahead of Nick Tandy. 5.975, Nick Tandy in second, and he's 10 seconds clear of Nicky Thiem, who's up to third in the 95 Aston. Fourth, Danny Juncadella for R8G. R8, it's Roman Grosjean's eSport team. He's not racing here, but they've got a starry lineup in that car. And unusually, they've chosen a Chevy Corvette. So again, coming back to you, Chris McCarthy, why and how have teams chosen which car when they've had the choice? Well, we'll get back to that in a moment and get back to Haley, our virtual pit reporter, and have a word with one of the drivers from the number 8 Toyota Gazoo racing team, Sebastian Buemi.
So we're just going to have a chat with Sebastian Buemi, who is the Toyota Gazoo racing team, car number 8, who can maybe give us a bit more insight as to what happened with his teammate Brandon back there. Hey Sebastian, firstly, how are you doing? And can you give us a bit more information about what happened there, where he lost the time?
Yeah, so basically I think Brennan had a little glitch and he basically spun and damaged the car. So by the time we got back and we repaired, it took 5 minutes to repair. So obviously we lost lots of ground, but this is like that, you know. It's part of the game that sometimes you have some little connection issues. So hopefully that's not gonna happen again, and hopefully we can come back strongly.
Absolutely. So I imagine your stint will be coming up soon. How are you feeling coming into this 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual, Sebastian?
Well, I'm feeling good. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not gonna drive until 9 p.m. tonight. So I'm the last one in the car. So we'll see. But basically, can't wait to get to drive.
We can't wait to see you. So thanks a lot, Sebastian.
Okay, thank you.
Well, again, you could see, you know, this is so much part of it, isn't it? Things racing drivers don't have to do, set the car up themselves. I mean, physically actually make the changes to the car. You could see Seb down there working on the keyboard he's got alongside, just getting everything sorted out and getting ready to go. Shouldn't need to be in until 9 o'clock this evening, so 6 hours into the race. But Alan, for all of these drivers and engineers from the real world who have been furloughed in World Endurance terms since February in COTA, it's a chance. Actually, they're working together. You know, they might have had a Zoom conference or something, but there's been nothing to actually do until the build-up to this race. Now they're actually working together as a team again, and like you and I, with our TV and all the production people around, it feels like we're starting to make these footsteps back into the normal world again.
Yeah, for sure, there's no question, and this is a way of actually honing that as we go forward. I think it's significantly more than just a test and a trial right now. It's breaking new ground. You mentioned Brendan Hartley there. He's 2 laps down now, so that's going to be a tough one for them to come back, because 2 laps on a normal circuit is, well, okay, you can think 24 hours, but that's over 7 minutes round this particular place. And with the competition level, looking at the top of the list with Kelvin van der Linde, Stoffel van Dorn, Max Verstappen, Antonio Felix da Costa, Raffaello Marciello, and that's only the top 5, then he's going to have his work cut out to try to get back onto the lead part of it. However, I've done this race many times. We've been in the same situation where you think it's all over and you're just sort of going to finish the race, and suddenly you may end up on a podium. So it's never over until that checkered flag drops at 1500 on Sunday.
Well, Chris, we just had another slew of GTE pit stops. So Loke Hartog, Ben Barker, Johnny Adam, Francesco Castellacci and the Strong Together Ferrari. That's the all-red one. Lawrence Hur, who last time I commentated on him was racing an LMP3 car at Le Mans last year in Road to Le Mans in the support races. He's in with Team Project One. So is Dylan Pereira. They've all stopped. Still Seb Priaulx, the Multimatic car, with those problems. And you can see Seb working away on in the keyboard as we were chatting to Andy. Seb's mum was there as well, so and his sister Danny will be in the house and sort of watching what's going on there as they frantically try and reconnect themselves to the outside world. And that's all, you know, all part of it. But so far, everything seems to be running fairly much according to plan. Interesting, though, the Dempsey Proton car that led in GTE stopped last lap. Nick Tandy has just come in this lap. So was Tandy able to suck up behind the 88 car for those 2 stints and save a lap of fuel somewhere?
Yes, I'd say so. We were, you know, myself and Lewis speaking to drivers. Oh, there we go. More drivers in the pits. So what's been happening? We reckon GTE's around 79 seconds for a full stop. That's fuel and tyres. 66 seconds roughly for fuel. So we're expecting them again to go on brand new soft tyres, because they can make up that difference over 14 laps. So drivers, to get to that 14 laps, they're probably going to be having to do some lifting and coasting into the 2 chicanes.
Yeah, and you can see there actually in the display, you can't see any mechanics putting on tyres, but you can see the car popping up and then dropping back down again, and that is effective tyre change, and the refueling clearly takes longer than the tyre change itself.
And look at Charles Leclerc waiting to be released. Just sitting there, waiting. I don't know, you know how long those tiny periods of time feel when you've been doing 200 plus miles an hour, sitting stationary for 20 or 30 seconds. It must feel like a lifetime.
Well, you're sitting there, in the first pit stop's one thing. If it's the last pit stop and you're in the dice for the lead, then that's a very different thing. But you're trying to control your heart rate, you're trying to keep your eyes open, trying to wait for the effective signal for you to go and then release it as quickly as possible. You've got to be careful, you can't be too aggressive coming out the pits, because that's been one thing, especially in the GTs when they were all in together, then you can easily get a penalty just by crowding coming out into the fast lane itself. And so you've got to have a lot of spatial awareness. But certainly for Charles Leclerc there, he's now on his way, and he's coming up into the Dunlop chicane, keeping well to the right-hand side. That's an area that's easy to sort of get tagged.
Now, as we saw the car coming out of the pits there, again, something that Eduardo Freitas, the race director, said, okay, if you've got a safety car, do the pit lane lights go red so you can't go into the pit lane and can't go out the pit lane? No. Why would you do that? Oh, look, because, and as they were having this discussion in one of the practice races, somebody came flying out of the pit lane right into the middle of the safety car queue, because you don't want that. Ah, yes, okay. So the game has adapted to fit what the real world does, in the same way that the real world is adapted with the drivers and the engineers to fit how the game works. So it's, you know, again, we talk about this so many times, everybody is learning so much in this experience.
Yeah, we all are. Yeah, all of us here, we're learning a lot. But one thing I would say, and one thing that perhaps is going to be surprising to a few people, is Danny Juncadella has stayed out for an extra lap. He is the only one not to come in. And Danny Juncadella, very experienced in esports. He's in a Corvette for this, and we were talking pre-race that maybe the Corvette could go 15 laps. So it is good to see that Danny Juncadella, his esports experience is seeing him go a little bit longer with those fuel and tyres.
And there's a little bit of a break in balance of performance for the Corvette. So have they not had a couple of litres added to their fuel allowance? Maybe that's made the difference. And the balance of performance has been interesting. There is a balance of performance in the real world for World Endurance Championship. It's based on the speeds of the cars perform, and you use, you know, you're mixing very different cars. Front-engined Aston Martin and Corvette, mid-engined, rear-engined Ferrari and Porsche. They're very different things. Big, normally aspirated engines, smaller power, turbo-powered engines, and so balance of performance works. But one of the things that fascinated me in the game, Chris, in R-Factor 2, for this race, anybody was allowed to go and officially set times in any car. And so that was to remove any hint that somebody might be limiting their performance in the testing races or in qualifying to sandbag somehow. So if you thought that the Porsche definitely was quicker than they made it look, you as an Aston Martin driver could go out and set times in the Porsche and they would register in the mix for balance of performance. So being able to drive your rival's car as fast as is humanly possible helps make the playing field as level as humanly possible.
Alan will know, racing drivers will do literally anything they can to gain an advantage, and as soon as they jumped onto R-Factor 2, that's something they thought about straight away. Let's sandbag, that will give us better balance of performance, and when we get to Le Mans, we're going to be down the road. No, anyone can go out and drive those cars, and of course you can get in those cars and learn about the cars as well. You can learn all about your rivals. What are they doing with the setup? How long can they go on fuel? They would have known this stuff before the race, so it's something that happens in esports.
And of course, you've got, here's an example, the IDEX Sport team that are in the garage here, or in the studio with us here. Mickey Hoyer, who is their sim racing expert, has been doing an awful lot of leading the development of the car, the setup. He's testing all these different things. Yesterday, after one of the test sessions he did at Le Mans, he then went to Indy to run the car wide open on the oval just to see what the top speed was for the effects of how much you blank the brakes off, what it gave you in terms of top speed. You can't do that in the real world. He can do it in the stroke of a keyboard. I'm going to Indianapolis, I'm going to run wide open, 25% brake blanking, 50% brake blanking, 75% brake blanking. How does that affect the real world speed? Because it's slightly different in the real world compared to the sim world. How does that affect the top speed? And then they'll come back and say, we gain almost 1.5 kilometers or 1 kilometer an hour in terms of top speed if we have 75% brake blanking, but it's going to mean earlier and more gently on the brakes at Mulsanne Corner or somewhere. So there are ways of balancing all these things, but the testing you can do is phenomenal. Well, let's take a look. We are unbelievably already just coming up to the end of the beginning of the second hour, 4:04 Central European Summertime, and our race leader overall is E-Team WRT Kelvin van der Linde from Stoffel Vandoorne and Max Verstappen. Antonio Felix da Costa for Jota Redline, Raffaele Marcello for Rebellion Williams, and Toyota Gazoo Racing. We're just here as a team building exercise. We've got no chance. Jose Maria Lopez is running in 6th position, so that's That's 6 teams, 6 different groups of drivers in the top half dozen. And then in our GTE field, well, it's all change, but it's all the same. Loic Hartog, though, for Dempsey Proton, back in the race lead. He's just set the fastest race lap, followed by another faster race lap, and he is now on a third faster race lap. It's now a 3-minute 50.082. He's gone purple in sector 1 of his current lap. He leads Nick Tandy now by 11.5 seconds, and in third place, Nicky Team for Aston Martin, a further 17.8 seconds back. So Loic Hartog out front for Dempsey Proton in GTE. The start of the 24-hour of Le Mans Virtual, and a flyer from Tom Dillman for the pole sitters. And with a great start to the race, Tom Dillman putting Bicolors Burst Esports well clear. Porsche dominated qualifying in GT, and so they did the early forays at the start of the race. Our pole sitter Nick Tandy, former outright Le Mans winner, led away from Neil Jarney, and Loic Hartog for Dempsey Proton. Hartog first got by Jarney very early on in the opening lap, and then set about chasing down Nick Tandy. Big trouble at the Indianapolis, second part of Indianapolis for one of our cars, and then a change in the GTE lead. The Dempsey Proton car with Loic Hartog taking the lead, and Nick Tandy sitting behind him, content early enough in the race to just let the car in front pull him along. Lots of battling with Ferrari, Corvette, Porsche and Aston Martin in the GTE class. All our prototype drivers in the same Oreca 07 LMP2 car, no matter what their background. And a good battle with Jose Maria Lopez working his way up the order. The number 7 Toyota started the race in 18th position. Toyota unusual in having 3 of their pro race drivers and 1 sim expert in each of their pair of cars. But it seems that Jose Maria Lopez is definitely dialing himself in superbly to this LMP2 car. Probably much less for him to do. No hybrid systems to worry about, no constantly playing with the brake balance. Late on in the first hour, after the first pit stops, a spin for the 36 Cinetec car. A penalty then earned for Fernando Alonso as he knocks Simona Di Silvestra's 94 Porsche off the road, turning into the Porsche curves. The all-red Ferrari, the Racing Together car, which is mostly being driven from the Automobile Club de Monaco, that was working its way up the GTE class as well. Battles raging up and down the order. In the real world, LMP2 is always a hotbed of close action, and so it is proving in the virtual world too. Loic Hartog out front for Dempsey Proton at the 1 hour mark. Will they still be in the hunt in 23 hours from now when we get ready for the checkered flag? Out front, Ollie Rowland now currently lying in 3rd position for 7Cs. Jose Maria Lopez 2nd for Toyota Gazoo Racing, and Raffaele Marciello leads for Rebellion Williams. Well, that's 1 hour in and another slew of pit stops. I'm Martin Haven. With me is Chris McCarthy, one of our pair of sim racing experts, and again Kelvin van der Linde, the race leader, Stoffel van Dorn, who else? Antonio Felix Costa, Sasha Fenestras, Jenson Button, a whole bunch of cars from LMP2 diving into the pit lane. The hour mark is up, so for the first time in the race, they are now allowed to change drivers, but we'll have to wait and see exactly who does and doesn't, because it's been a short stint so far. Let's catch up again with Alan McNish and see who he's got to chat to.
Abdullah Aziz, it's fantastic to see you there and looking so well, but you're no stranger to Le Mans. You've raced this event yourself 6 times so far in GT and finished in the top 10, if I remember, on 4 occasions. So first of all, what actually attracted you to this dynamic race?
Hello Alan, it's good to see you and it's good to see everyone, and even that it's virtual racing, that we're back and watching such exciting racing. It feels like the real thing. And it's a bit weird that it's so realistic. So Yeah, Le Mans is such a significant race, and being part of this is amazing. We had a strategy since the pandemic that happened with the Ministry of Sports in Saudi to go virtual, basically, and not to stop our events and our programs. And we've done a lot of programs so far regarding health and safety towards this pandemic. And I hope everyone's staying safe and battling this pandemic, and hopefully it flashes very soon. So that's the initial drive that got us towards being part of this initiative, and how important it is to reach out to the world and to be part of such a significant event.
Personally, I see this as a bit of a game changer in the way that we look at esports and racing, and how the dynamic between the virtual world and the real world actually comes together. Is that the same for you?
Yes, 100%. And for the past 3 years, we've invested a lot in esports. We've created a federation that's concentrated for esports and trying to promote esports within the kingdom and internationally. The past month or 2 months, actually, we've had competitions, a competition called Games Without Borders, or Gamers Without Borders, and basically gamers from all over the world to be part of certain games that were played. And a lot of the earnings that came in, around $10 million, that would go to charity and would go to fighting the pandemic. So definitely, it's shifted our strategies for the future. And as you can see today, with this technology, you can do a lot. I know that in some countries, even here in Saudi, we were restricted to moving out of our houses, but that does not mean that we stop engaging with the people and so on.
Yeah, certainly, there's no question about that. There's been a lot of people that have came to the fore. Some of the drivers that I see on the list right now, we know the names of Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, but there's some of these new sim drivers that are actually putting the pressure on, and they're going to be names for the future, partly because of the situation we're in right now. But tell me, what about you? Where's your e-racing rig? Is it stuck in the corner? Do you get on the sim?
I do, but not as much as I like to. And as you know, there are specialized people that are at this these days. And, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort. I think Jenson Button even mentioned that it's even maybe harder to driving the real thing. So it definitely needs a lot of time in the sim, and it's nice. It's nice to see new faces, new people coming in and linking the real world with the virtual world, and trying to make something out of it. And from the basis of this, I can see that there's a future for this, hopefully.
Yeah, I certainly think you're right on that one. Well, thank you very much for being here, talking to us, and we've got to get back to the live action on track.
Thank you.
Alan McNish with Prince Abdulaziz Al Faisal, a racing driver of some ability in GTE cars. Now again, Chris McCarthy, we've seen a slew of LMP2 pit stops. Ollie Rowland leading the race at the moment. That car has only made one stop. Joop van Uytert for United Autosports, one of the two LMP2 cars with a 4-pro driver lineup, not a sim racer in sight. They may well have used some sim race input to set their car up, but those guys still owe us a pit stop. Behind them, Kelvin van der Linde lies in third, but he is going to be our race leader once Rowland and Van Uytert stop, because they can't run forever. Just like in the real world, cars need fuel.
Yeah, they're going to run out after 10 laps, was our prediction, what we had speaking to some of the teams. Some people are going to wonder, why would you put 4 professional drivers in there for a 24-hour race? Why not use sim drivers like a lot of other people have had? This is a unique opportunity, Martin. We don't know if this is ever going to happen again. And this is the opportunity for the drivers to get that Le Mans feel and experience all the way through this week. And it's a challenge for them. It's going to put them to the test. And that's a unique experience.
It really is. Look at Jose Maria Lopez in the top right of your screen. He is in real hunter-killer mode. He is just carving his way through everybody. Behind him, Larry-Ten Forder, who we last saw racing in GTE in the Pro-Am series in World Endurance. But Larry-Ten Forder, a Porsche racer now, has become an LMP2 race as well for TDS E-Racing Motul. But Lopez in the number 7 car up to 7th place. Ollie Rowland, the de facto race leader. There's Larry-Ten Forder in the top right of your screen. Ollie Rowland has stopped. Joop van Uytert will stop in a moment, and that will bump Lopez back up to 5th. And again, the FARB car going very slowly. it looks like another problem for Fernando Alonso. Is driving that car for his own team. In 30th place, he is trying to creep it back to the pits, and that's very early in the lap. Top two, as they were, have both pitted here at Le Mans. We are 11 minutes past the 4 o'clock mark, so an hour and 11 minutes into the race. Ollie Rowland, Kelvin van der Linde has now gone by him to resume the race lead. Van der Linde stopped a couple of laps earlier, so Kelvin van der Linde for WRT, 1 lap shorter on fuel on stint 1 and on stint 2 than Ollie Rowland for 2Cs Motorsports, so that could be very interesting. Well, let's hear a little bit more about her foundation from Her Serene Highness, Princess Charlène of Monaco.
Hi, I'm Pedro Sagan. As an ambassador of the Princess Charlène of Monaco Foundation, I support the call for donation during 24 hours Le Mans virtual race.
Sagan, of course, will be hoping to be racing in the Tour de France later in the summer. Normally it would be in July, but that is not going to happen as of yet. And of course, while you might be able to run a race like Le Mans behind closed doors because it's in an enclosed facility, even though it is a vast enclosed facility with 13.6 kilometers of track, a large percentage of which is closed public roads, not much of the Tour de France happens indoors, so that is going to be a very tough one to try and police if they're trying to do it without any spectators. So Peter Sagan supporting the foundation of Princess Charlène of Monaco. And on board now as we battle in the bottom of the top 20. Rebellion Williams eSport car, number 3. That is Arthur Rougier, the Frenchman. Rougier chasing Paul-Louis Chatin from IDEX Sport. He's in 19th place. Ahead of them, United Autosports' Felipe Albuquerque has just come back out of the pits, as has Ollie Rowland, who seems to be one of the real feather-shoed drivers. He seems to be getting a little bit more out of his fuel than most of the other LMP2 cars, so that could play in their favour, you know, by tomorrow afternoon.
Well, he's been racing. Like I said, he's done very well in the Formula E race at Home Challenge Series. He was 3rd in that, and he was in the top 5 in the championship, 5th in the Isolation E Racing Series. So he's had a lot of practice. He is not new to this. Some of our drivers are coming into this, and it is their first esports race. So it's going to be a real challenge for them. But for Ollie Rowland, he went to his 2Cs teammates, and he said, teach me how to do this, and teach me how to get most out of the fuel and the tyres. And it's working so far.
And in the inset, very familiar features of Grand Prix winner in Le Mans, Indy 500 winner Juan Pablo Montoya, now turned Le Mans eSports racer. He's racing for Roger Penske. Penske has had sports car racing and single-seater racing teams for half a century, and it's no secret, Alan McNish, Roger Penske wants to come back to Le Mans, and this convergence between the ACO rules and the IMSA rules, it's making it more and more likely, and this, as we heard earlier from Simon Pagenaud, is their first step on the road back to Le Mans racing.
Certainly, Roger Penske's won pretty much everything he's ever touched in business and certainly in the sport, there's no question. But the Le Mans 24 Hours is the big trophy that's still missing from his cabinet. So from that perspective, there is no question. I've known him for quite a few years and competed against him. He's a ruthless competitor. Even maybe at older years, as someone's just got off the 22 car, United Autosports spun it on the exit of Indianapolis there. But Roger Penske is without a shadow of a doubt a massive competitor. He'll be back at Le Mans, and hopefully very soon.
Riding on board with number 17, but fresh out of the pits just behind Felipe Albuquerque in the number 22 United Autosports car. There he is, just gasses up a fraction too early, coming out of Indianapolis, and into the barriers he goes.
Yeah, he was a little bit offline actually in the right-hander, and so he was on the dirty part inside, and so his actual apex point was the same, but his trajectory was going in the wrong direction and looped it around.
Now, Chris McCarthy, one of the odd things about the R Factor 2 here is that he may have damage, but it doesn't show visibly. So what effect will he be feeling in his sim rig?
Exactly the same as what you would feel in a car. His wheel could be at an angle, for example. The tyre, if he's flat spotted the tyres, then that's going to be vibrating down the straights. And we were shown that earlier in the week with the IDEC team, who we were just looking at there. That can happen, and the effect is just the same. You can even injure yourself if you have a big enough incident in these rigs. So it is just the same as it would be if you were out there driving on the Circuit de la Sarthe.
Yeah, because the force feedback motor's in the steering wheel, if you have a big impact, it wrenches the steering wheel, and if you have the motor ramped up too high, Michi Hoyer was saying he only has this at about 40% of its power, it means that the car is heavy enough to turn. And again, yeah, Albuquerque is carrying a little too much in, tyres cold, and they're coming out at about 65 degrees Celsius from the pit lane, but the operating temperature's around 130, so he just was being a bit ambitious on full tanks, first lap out for him in the race, and yeah, there's the penalty he's going to have to carry now to the next pit stop. Around 130.
It's going to be dirty offline. It looked like he actually clipped the gravel on the outside as well, and I think that would have helped him on his way. One thing I do want to point out actually is Team Redline have put one of their sim drivers in. I think they are the only team within the top 10 to have done that. So Atsay Kirchhoff, who is an incredibly quick driver, is out there, and he's just set the fastest lap of the race as well.
All right, the problems for Fernando Alonso's car. So he was fuel, we understand. There was only 1.3 litres left in the tank as they started on that lap. Now, normally the car will burn 7.5 litres at full race pace. Again, look at the Toyota Gazoo Racing #7 car. I said earlier he's taking no prisoners. Blimey, Lopez is really attacking hard. Gave Raffaello Marciello no chance to change his mind there, just went scything by him.
May I suggest, though, that Jose Maria Lopez is actually using his racing experience from Le Mans to know where to put the car and to be able to run around. As long as you get round the outside early enough, then the driver on the inside kind of does have to give way. Certainly when he gets to the left-hander, then it's game over. And so he is very aggressive, but he's doing it in a way that actually compromises the other car as much as it does himself.
Yeah.
And so it's quite good strategy there from Lopez at the moment.
Well, he's up to 4th place, and as you say, Atsay Kirchhoff in the Team Redline car. That's car number 20, and that is the one that he shares with Max Verstappen, Lando Norris and Gregor Houtu. He's now set the fastest race lap, just 2 laps into his stint, 3 minutes 26.67, but Lopez best lap, 3:26.89. He's barely any slower.
Yeah, but that doesn't really tell a heck of a lot of the story at the moment at the front. You've still got Van der Linde that is leading, and then Van Dorn second. Now Kirchhoff back in third. But Kirchhoff, in the 4 laps that he has done in his stint, is actually just over about a second a lap faster on average than the guys ahead of him. So he's on a massive charge at the moment, Kirchhoff.
And Felipe Albuquerque in trouble again, running into the back of a GTE car that then had to go off in the gravel to try and gather it all together. So he spun on his out lap and hit the barriers, and now he's hit traffic on his first flying lap. So pretty certain that that is going to incur a penalty for the United Autosports number 22 car. What doesn't happen here is our race director, Eduardo Freitas, doesn't trot across the studio with a piece of paper and hand it to us, but it will be announced on the radio if that happens.
Well, I can see race direction from here, and they're actually replaying the incident as we speak and discussing it. So I think Felipe will, keep your head down and keep on driving, but the chances of something coming your way is pretty high.
I think we need this in the ACO tower. We need to have our commentary position in the back of race control so we can see all of that stuff that's going on as well. Of course, then you'll complain that you can't see 3 inches of the Ford chicane, but, you know, you've got to take these things as they come. Raffaele Marciello in the Rebellion Williams, who just got dive-bombed, is in the pit lane. Now, he's gone in for what I must assume would be a routine stop, but if so, then that number 1 of 4 Rebellion Williams esports cars might be struggling a little. Raffaele started the car. He shares with the Swiss Louis Delatraz, son of Jean-Denis Delatraz, sports car racer and occasional Grand Prix driver, Nikodem Wisniewski and Kuba Brzezinski. So 2 Polish sim experts in that car, and both those guys in addition to having lots of consonants in their name, have got a vast experience. Wisniewski and Brzezinski, Chris, in that #1 Williams car. They are hugely talented drivers in the sim racing world.
Yeah, they've raced as teammates, Kuba and Nicodem. They actually won a Fanatec 12-hour of Sebring race together last year in the LMP2 class. So they know this car very well. They've been successful in it as well. But Louis Delatraz has also been an informed driver. He's leading an eSport Pro Series as well, which a lot of our professional drivers are in. So Delatraz is incredibly quick as well. But Kuba and Nicodem would have helped the guys in that car set a very good strategy for this race.
Watching Juan Pablo Montoya in the Accuried livery Penske. So although Acura is not a car in the game, they're using their regular IMSA livery on the car. You know, full team, full driver spec, and again, I'm sure they're using all their regular engineers and everything else to try and get the best out of that car. Bruno Senna there in the inset. And Bruno in his home in Sao Paulo as well. He made the trip back down to South America when it seemed inevitable that Europe was going to be locked down.
I did just want to say, Martin, actually, Bruno got his sim about 3 weeks ago. He got it specifically for this event.
Beg your pardon, he is back in Monaco, so yeah. And again, I talked to him a little bit earlier in the couple of months ago, and he was saying he and his girlfriend live in a very small flat. Said she's not going to be very impressed if there's a huge sim, which would basically fill their lounge. Obviously, therefore, she's very unimpressed because not only is the sim there, but she won't be able to go in the lounge all weekend.
And you would have seen it, the Thrustmaster ones we have in here, who kindly have given us these sims for the guys, IDEC and Signatech to race in. They don't just fold up and go in the cupboard. Yeah. You know, once they're set up, it takes you a long time to take them back down again. So unless Bruno is getting absolutely no sleep, then he's taken over a huge part of that house.
Well, I think a lot of them are getting very little sleep. It's, again, you know, the sim world mirrors the real world. Everybody gets into Le Mans absolutely exhausted because they spent so much time working on setup, working on the car, and getting very little sleep.
Well, the Le Mans Esports Series, what I commentate on as well. Now, how that worked is the teammates were taken from all 3 different regions around the world. And then when we met up at Le Mans for the 24-hour last year for the super final race, I said to the guys, how have you been practicing? And they said, well, very little really, because we've got jobs, you know, we're studying. So for one of us to be racing at lunch, be practicing at lunchtime, and then the other one in the middle of the night, for example, it is very, very difficult. So sometimes that does restrict the team from actually getting practice as a team together.
Yeah, absolutely so. And we talked about this in qualifying yesterday. You know, our pro drivers are all, you know, that's their job. Our pro sim racers, that's their job. But some of them, it's not all they do. We talked about one of our youngest drivers, just 14 years old. Well, he's at school all day, every day. I mean, and right now it's still school term time, so all of his hours on the sim, you know, Mum, can I go on the computer again? Oh, must you really? Well, I am racing at Le Mans against Jenson Button, and so he's burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, I mean, for our viewers at home, you know, who have, we've got
it's been stationary for a while, actually. Watched it as we had the last shot down the straight, and don't forget, that car had fuel issues, and what did I say right at the very beginning? Any amount of damage, if you get the car back to the pit lane, it will get there eventually, but the one thing that will eliminate a car is if you run out of fuel. And I did get a message saying they only had 1.3 litres of fuel to get back to the pit lane. Normally the car needs 7.5. Now, whether they can creep back on idle on 1.3 litres, I'm afraid I'm not clever enough to tell you. We'd need somebody from Gibson Engine Technologies.
Well, you'd actually come back on the starter motor if you were in the actual a real car. You'd get the starter motor to turn it over, but ultimately the starter motor's going to die at some point, and that's a heck of a long way. You know, I think a starter motor would last from maybe the Porsche Kurzbach, not from the second chicane on the Hood of the Air.
And so it's possible there might be other things going on with the issue, and our friends at Motorsport Games, who are here with us in the studio in Paris at Place de la Concorde, may well have more information than we've got at the moment. They might be able to tell us that there is another issue, maybe with Fernando's rig, but that little shot we had of Fernando in his rig look like he is still working. He certainly has not got up and walked away from it. So, they'll be desperate to keep the car going. Meanwhile, looking at Charles Leclerc, and again, another great view that the computer images give us that we would never get in the real world, from behind and just abaft of the car in its wake. Behind you can see the purple Team Project One Porsche chasing Leclerc. That's Dylan Pereira. This is a battle then for 15th in the GTE class.
Seeing that view, I've actually had a GoPro camera stuck on the side of the car to see tyre deflection at Road Atlanta in the USA. And after seeing it once, I didn't want to get back in the car. What a tyre has to go through is just absolutely unreal. The deflection and the twist and everything else that happens from it. And you get this beautiful view of it exactly like that.
Listen, we're getting messages in already from all over the globe saying how much people are loving this virtual Le Mans 24 hours. First of all, thank you for getting in touch. Thank you for being with us for the start of this huge boundary-breaking experiment and 24-hour Le Mans race. And also, again, great kudos to Gérard Neveu, the boss of WEC and Le Mans Endurance Management, for putting this all together, for dragging in this unbelievably talented grid from 2 different worlds and getting this whole thing to run. I'm sure a lot of people thought he was absolutely mad and it was never going to happen, but it is absolutely keeping us on the edge of our seats. Lots more racing still to come. We've barely got started. Stopped on the side of our track is Fernando Alonso in his LMP2 car. And there was also a problem briefly for Brendan Hartley. He's had connection problems, we believe, from New Zealand, where he is racing in the dead of night. It'll soon be dawn there rather than late afternoon. The number 8 Toyota Gazoo racing car. You saw a little shot there of one of our prototype drivers in his rig, and that was Larry Tenforder. He's currently racing in 6th position. You can see the orange nose, the TDS car, chasing down Antonio Felix da Costa for 5th in the Jota Team Redline machine.
He's been catching just very gradually over the time. He's a little bit harder on the power coming out of the Mulsanne and Arnage corners, and so I'd say that one big difference here, and it's maybe something that is going to play out over the length of this stint, is just with that energy going into that rear tyre and the thermal degradation that will come from the tyre. Maybe benefits him at the moment in pure performance, but later on, Da Costa is nice and smooth and it may come back to him.
Yeah, you've got to be very careful with degradation. Particularly in the GT car, the car is going to be extremely loose coming through the Porsche curves. And the drivers are telling me it's just about trying to control that as much as you can. The degradation is going to be higher in the LMP class. And again, it's going to be very, very difficult to adjust to that and to stop the degradation, to lower that throughout the stint.
Jackson Evans, we ride on board in the 92 Porsche as he chases Nicky Thiem. And the LMP2 car's coming flying by. Nicky Thiem, top right. His hair has not calmed down any during lockdown, but he has become a dad. So he put out a challenge on social media to come up with a new name for his daughter. I'm not sure that's a great idea. Below him, Jackson Evans, and he's the man chasing the Aston Martin in the Porsche. Brand new fastest lap for Loic Hertog on the last lap, 3:49.8. He's our GTE leader. Ollie Rowland, last lap, a new fastest race lap for him in the 2Cs Motorsport car. Then Stoffel Vandoorne went quicker, 3:26.57. Now, Jerzy Simončić, who set pole for Bajkoles, the car that was dropped out of the lead because it jumped the start. He's back up to 13th place. He's just set the fastest race lap, 3:26.45. So he took over from Tom Dillman after the first hour, and he is working his way back towards contention in the LMP2 class. Kelvin van der Linde leads from Stoffel Vandoorne, who has nearly halved the deficit down to 5.0 seconds. And Atse Kirchhoff the sim racer, who's the top sim racer at the moment for Team Redline, in third in the number 20 car. He is just 5 seconds behind, so they are closing down. In fact, there's been a change. Van der Linde has dropped down to third, and it's Stoffel van Dorn who leads from Atse Kirchhoff. So the cameras didn't pick that up. We'll try and find that in replay as we look at the battle in GT, and Kelvin van der Linde is sinking like a stone. He's now out of the top half dozen. So where is van der Linde gone? He's gone off somewhere. He's completed Sector 1 and Sector 2 of the tracks. It'll be on the return leg through Maison Blanche to Porsche Curve, somewhere like that. He may well be a pit caller shortly. Looking at Loic Hertog, he is our GTE leader for Dempsey Proton, a 3:49.8. And actually, one of the factors we found out after qualifying, we were talking about how green the track probably still would be. The drivers were surprised at how grippy and rubbered up it was. Conditions are perfect here. We're seeing the lap times tumble in both categories. Chris McCarthy watching Larry Tenforda here in the TDSE Racing Motul car, 5th place overall. It's bright sunshine, it's not too hot on the track is beautifully rubbered in. It looks like absolutely paradise for these drivers in terms of grip levels.
It is, and you know, Larry's has been very quick in esports. He actually won the Porsche Mobile One Super Cup Virtual Edition, so he's coming into this in good form as well, Larry Tenforda. And that increases your confidence hugely. Alan will know that if you're coming into a 24-hour Le Mans race, coming off the back of a championship win, then you're going to be pushing that little bit harder. You're going to be taking those little bit more risks, and you're going to be going in going, I don't want anything less than a victory, and that is what Larry is doing at the moment. And he's driving very well, up in 5th place at the moment. There's a long race ahead, and the gap only 19 seconds to Stoffel van Dorn out in the lead. And I've got to say, Stoffel is doing very well, because Atse Kirchhoff hasn't been able to reduce that gap from 4-5 seconds. Atse Kirchhoff, incredibly experienced driver. We've got to remember, though, Stoffel van Dorn is just coming off the back of winning a championship himself, so he is proving he is just as quick of these guys. But Atse Kirchhoff may just be waiting for later in his stint to start pushing and reducing that gap. As we can see, he's starting to reduce the deficit now. It's come down to 4.2 seconds, which is the lowest it's been. So it will be interesting to follow that Team Redline car, look at the gaps and see if he can catch Stoffel van Dorn.
Well, actually, in the stint so far, they're actually getting quicker, because Van Dorn's average over the first stint was a 28.0, over the second stint a 27.8, and over the third stint, which is now 8 laps old, so nearly at the end of it, a 27.4. However, as you said, Kirchhoff, his is a 27.0 for the final stint at the moment. So therefore he is catching, but the thing is, if Van Dorn doesn't make any mistakes, then it's going to be just difficult for him to catch, and it's about trying to delay the maybe inevitable as much and as long as you can. And inevitable, though, unfortunately, is for Kelvin van der Linde, who's effectively led from the beginning of the race after the Collis car, and he's still stopped in the second part of the circuit. So it's after the first chicane and somewhere down towards Indianapolis.
Yeah, so keep an eye open. Let's see if we can spot where the WRT car is, because it should be visible on screen, as we saw with Fernando Alonso's car. Seb Priaulx for Multimatic Sancho, he is back in the race, and that's good news, because that one rig in the Channel Island of Guernsey, he and Dad Andy Priaulx are both using. You could see his mum Jo was there in the room. She's probably on the phone to the internet company going, why haven't we got any internet? But if they lose that rig, then that's both the pro drivers in the same rig from that Multimatic Sancho car out of it. And so suddenly, there's only 2 drivers left, and that means basically they're doing 11.5 hours each, because we're only an hour in, and we potentially lost both Priaulx. And then, of course, you have to go and argue about minimum driver time to say that, but we're on one rig and we can't join the game. And you can see here, Motorsport Games could see that they weren't connected. Riding on board then with Atse Kirchhoff, this is the car that is in second place for Team Redline, and boy, I tell you, the onboard is just as frightening for them in the virtual world as it is when we're watching the real world cars. And here is the car that's up to third now, from 16th on the grid in an hour. Jose Maria Lopez.
Yeah, he's very quick, Pachito. I actually did an event a couple of years ago. It was on the build-up to the World Endurance Race 6 Hour of Fuji, and they brought all the Toyota drivers, put them in rigs, and said, right, race each other. And Pachito, he went in saying, I'm going to easily win this. I've got the most esports experience. But he was actually the most aggressive with his approach and ended up taking himself out the race and a couple others with him. But it was fantastic to see Fernando actually won it in the end, just ahead of Mike Conway. But it was a fantastic event as they were all just trying to take each other out. But Pachito, with his aggressive style, just caught a spin.
Larry Tenforder into the pit lane. This will be a regular stop. So this is his third stop. Raffaele Marcello's made 3. Simuncic in the Baicoles car. That car's made 3, and so has the number 18 Veloce car with Sasha Fenestraz at the wheel. So Fenestraz going on to a quad stint. It's already had 3 stops. They haven't had a penalty. One of the stops of Baicoles was a drive-through. So that was for jumping the start. So that's the only penalty that we have had so far. Kelvin van der Linde plummeted down the order because he had a disconnect. So yeah, that's news that we've just received. So Team WRT, like the Multimatic Sancho car of Sebastian and Andy Prio and their teammates, they had a disconnect. Look at this battle though. Aston Martin's 95 just ahead of the 92 Porsche of Jackson Evans. And all of these cars, a variety of red, white and black in the 4 different liveries that the Porsche esports team are running. And this is a new venture for Porsche Motorsport. And I have to say, from the flurry of press releases that I'm receiving, they are pushing it exactly as hard as they would do with all the information that they would produce as if we were at the Circuit de la Sarthe this weekend. The only difference is we can't stop in and have a coffee with them. But other than that, you know, it is full on, right from the top down, factory motorsport program. And that's the same with Aston Martin. Aston Martin, most of their drivers are based in Gaydon, in the Aston Martin factory there, the works factory. And, you know, they've got all their drivers involved, all the pros involved, all the full team involved as well. So they're going at it as a full factory Le Mans 24-hour effort.
If you want to see what a factory sim looks like, just head on to their social media. Ben Constanturis actually sent us a photo. Their rig is awesome, which is being run as here we can see.
Yeah, you see Nicky Team in it. Yeah. It's got roll cage and everything around him.
Yeah, there you can see it.
And in fact, it looks like it's a motion rig as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So you're getting the full movement. Now, we actually talked about, you know, the guys in some of the rigs. It might be hard to concentrate as much as they usually would because the track isn't ahead of them. Instead, you know, they're in their office, you know, something like that, and looking out the window. That's to their left. But that is a proper rig, and there's no way you're going to lose focus in that. So definitely, Aston are taking this very seriously. And Martin, we also talked about, you were talking about the amount of professional drivers we have across both professional and sim drivers as well. This is the best grid I think there has ever been, and this is that chat you have with all your mates. If we put all of those drivers in exactly the same car, who would win? That's the case in the LMP2 class because they're all in the Oreca 07, and as for the GTE class, there is a balance of performance as well, so the performance is roughly going to be the same. So, you know, who would you pick? That's the thing. Which name would come to the top of your list? Whichever team wins, there's going to be people out there who are going to have massive bragging rights and are going to get rounds bought for them for the rest of their lives. And then for the teams who unfortunately have a little bit of less luck, who don't go so well, then they'll have to be thinking of excuses.
But again, that is exactly all about Le Mans. To win Le Mans, you've got to have exactly the right drivers, you've got to have exactly the right car, the right tyres, the right pit work, the right strategy, and the right luck.
Yes.
You turn up and you do your best, and off goes the Baicoles car. That was a huge off for the number 4 car. And again, you sense that that was unlikely to be driver error because it's now back on again. So that certainly was a very dramatic moment. But looks as though not Ate Kirchhoff, the Baicoles car is Simuncic is continuing without damage. Meanwhile, a flurry of pit stops. Stoffel Vandoorne is in from the lead. Ate Kirchhoff has lost a place or two. Antonio Felix da Costa, Jenson Button are both in the pit lane. We didn't know actually that the Toyota Argentina, no, that wasn't them. Who was that? That was 37 who came in as well. That's Jota Redline. They've got Dominic Farber in the car, so that's one of their sim drivers. as out goes, is it still Stoffel van Dorn? Oh, in fact, Ute Kerkhoff is shown as stopped in the number 20 Team Redline car. So Stoffel van Dorn stays in Veloce Esports, so that is their third stint, so he's quad stinting. Now, no driver can race more than 5 hours in any 7-hour period. Maximum for any driver is a total of 7 hours. Minimum for any driver is a total of 4 hours. So it's a real pro-am. So you don't just have somebody in, oh, he's nominally one of ours, but we're not actually going to give him more than 20 minutes behind a safety car or something. You've got to do a decent amount of donkey work. 4 hours for an LMP2 car is the long end of 6 stints, isn't it? So, 3 doubles or a couple of triple stints. So you're going to do a decent amount of legwork. And 7 hours, it means that nobody's going to drive 24 hours or 23 hours and just let everybody else do, 20 minutes here or there.
You've got to give every driver the chance to go and win the race, or perhaps more importantly, lose the race as well. So 4 hours, where do you give your weakest link those 4 hours? Do you do it in 2 stints early and get it out the way? Do you wait for the night time, which is going to be perhaps more difficult, where visibility is going to be an issue and track temp as well? Or do you wait to the end of the race, which would probably be unlikely? So it's a hard choice. You could do it in 4 short stints, or you could do it in 2 and get it out the way very quickly.
The bellowing sound of the V8 motor of the Corvette, nicely amplified through our headsets. I hope you're getting the full effect back home. By the way, are any of you camping out in the garden in whatever weather you've got? Are you existing on the 3 Bs? Beer, barbecue for every meal, and baguettes? Are you going the full Le Mans experience? Have you got your classic car parked in the drive and maybe Zooming or WhatsApping with your friends that you would otherwise be on the campgrounds at Circuit de la Sarthe? I want to know who's doing that. Danny Juncadella for Romain Grosjean's RHG Esports team, chasing Le Mans winner Nick Tandy in the Porsche Esports 93 car. And he's in the slipstream, he's pulling out, he's going to try and put the pressure on Tandy. Tandy staying on the inside line down to the chicane, but the Corvette just motors by, flames on the overrun out of the exhaust. I love just those little touches. There's Nick Tandy in the inset, driving from his home in Bedfordshire. And you saw Nicky Thiem, although he's Danish, he and his wife live in Austria. So he was driving in Austria, and Nicky Thiem in Austria. Here you can see Nick Tandy back home in the UK. And there is the pass, and the Corvette just got a great run down the straight out of Tertre Rouge, and Chris made that look really straightforward.
I think this is a case of Danny Juncadella coming towards the end of his stint. 26 laps have been completed, so 14 lap stints we're looking at. Danny Juncadella actually did 15, so I think he's made his move now.
Well, let's catch up with Allan McNish, with one of the most recognisable faces in sports cars.
Well, here with Hans Stuck, 2-time Le Mans winner, but something maybe you didn't know. When I first got into sports car racing, this guy was the man. And he was the man at Porsche, and that was able to deliver the lap time every single day of the week, but extremely relaxed. Hans, fantastic to see you and looking so well.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for the compliment. And I think I'm watching the race here for the last hour already. And I tell you, it's really exciting. It's cool. There's good racing going on. And to be honest, I would wish is to sit in the simulator and compete in it. What do you think about it?
Well, I think the fact you've got your helmet there at the side suggests that the passion still burns, and knowing you'd be in the simulator tomorrow, or in fact in an hour if you had the chance.
Absolutely ready to go, I mean, nevertheless, I mean, it can replace a real 24-hour, but that we have this race and we see it, I know how to work a simulator. It's high concentration required. It is fun. It's good sport. I mean, and we don't have to travel, don't have to book hotel rooms and everything, don't have any traffic jam. So why not? I think it's just great, I
have to say, I think the drivers have got a few traffic jams on the circuit by look at the racing. But if you just watch it, you could quite easily forget that you're not actually watching the real race at Le Mans. You're watching a virtual race. The way that the competition level is, the way the overtakings are, is that something you feel as well?
Absolutely. I mean, when I switched on shortly before the start an hour ago, I was positively shocked how real it is, you know. I mean, you see the cars when they drift and they go over the line. I mean, it's a bit different when somebody crashes like Mr. Alonso did, when he goes back on track. But it is really real. I'm totally positively shocked, really, absolutely.
You know, you have a massive history at Le Mans. You've got a massive passion towards Le Mans. Is this something that you could ever have imagined, that you were going to be sitting here in the middle of June instead of going to the circuit, but to be maybe spectating in this way?
No, Alan, definitely not. I mean, the last couple of months really, I think, have changed all our lives, especially in motorsport, you know. And on the other side, we have to be lucky if we're still here, we're healthy, you know, and not in any, you know, any hospital or in bad shape, lucky enough. But I'm really wondering how everything will go on in motorsport. And I hope that the FIA and other sanctioning bodies are taking the chance to get things in order, to talk about regulations, to talk about different classes, how it will be. But because I think the main target is to go racing again, whatever it means. It has to be just fantastically organized. And I'm happy that we see the first Formula 2 races here later on in Austria, where I'm living in Spielberg. And I can just, every night I go to bed, I pray, let's go racing again.
So you'll be opening up the window very soon and hearing the noise of engines singing the way through the Austrian mountains. But last question, are you going to be coming to Le Mans to hear the noises in reality when the race actually happens in the middle of September?
Absolutely, you bet I'll be there. I hope to see you then again, my friend, and all the other guys, you know, because you can't replace reality. This is for sure, you know. I mean, we all enjoy this. We're having a good time sitting at home. We have a cup of coffee next to me, but nothing can really replace our real beloved motor racing.
One final thing, nothing can ever replace Hans-Joachim Stuck either. You are one in the world that could be like you, with the energy, with the passion and the love for the sport. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in September at the real Le Mans 24 Hours.
Absolutely, Alan. Have fun there. Just send you some lovely greetings from Austria. Hola-iti, hola-iti, hola-iti. Have fun.
Thank you.
Utterly unique 46-year-old Hans-Joachim Stuck. Stritzel has had more than half a century racing career. You know, when Alan was racing, he was the man at Porsche, and he is still, and also teller of some of the filthiest jokes it will ever be your privilege to hear. So, Stritzel, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Alan for that. And if you have a Le Mans race and there's no Hans-Joachim Stuck, is it actually a Le Mans race? Wheel-to-wheel action there, replay into Indianapolis, and then one of the cars running off track. That looked like...
I think that was the red line car,
yeah,
wasn't it?
was that the 20 car or the 30 car was involved? So 20, it looked like the red line. It can't have been the WRT car. That has had its problems. Fernando Alonso's car now 20 laps down, but it is shown as being in the pits. Other cars that are in the pits at the moment: Johnny Adam for Aston Martin, Dylan Pereira for Team Project One, Francesco Castellacci for Strong Together, and Lawrence Hull, the other Project One car, is in. One question I wanted to ask, Chris: the first test race was a really successful one for one of our GT Aston Martin teams, Marla Racing Team, the 67 car. Now, they are down in 13th in the GTE class. Is that a car realistically that we expect to be a little further up in the race, or did the conditions just particularly suit them when it was wet?
Dark horse. They're going to be a fan favourite with Jimmy Broadbent on his birthday racing in that, with Rob Boykins, of course, a lot of support behind him. So I'd say we'll talk a little bit more about them, but they are definitely a dark horse.
Right now you can see Larry Tenforder trying to work his way back up into the top half dozen. Stoffel Van Dorn is still our race leader here at Le Mans. It is 4:50 Central European Summertime. We have almost completed 2 hours of the 24 Hours at Le Mans Virtual. Martin Haven, Chris McCarthy and Alan McNish watching the action with you. Don't forget, if you would like to make a donation to the Princess Charlene of Monaco Foundation, all the funds raised in the Strong Together appeal, you can see the website address down at the bottom, are going into the International Fund for the fight against COVID-19 to try and raise money to find, test and prove a vaccine and then spread it around the world.
24 hours where you can donate through the Princess Charlene of Monaco Foundation.
Thank you, Your Serene Highness, and the FIA World Endurance Championship have just added to that fund with a donation of €5,000. And we heard earlier on in the hour from Prince Abdulaziz Al Faisal from Saudi Arabia. He's a multiple Le Mans racer here and has been very successful in GTE racing, and he has donated €10,000 to the fund. You can donate whether you've got 10,000, 10 or even €1 to add to the fund. You can donate that online. You can see the address down at the bottom, and that will remain open throughout the entirety of the race and beyond. And every fundraising opportunity to try and raise money to fight against COVID-19, and particularly to find an antivirus inoculation, will be very welcome and received. Stoffel Vandoorne, our race leader for Velocia Esports 2, from Utse Kirchhoff up to second place in the number 20 Team Redline car. There is your race leader, and the next car in the picture behind, 3.5 seconds back, has just set yet another fastest race lap. We're now down to 3 minutes 26.123. Where's my grid sheet? What was the...
Well, while you're looking for that...
I'm less than 2 hours in, I've lost the grid. What was pole? 3:23.38. And so the race pace is less than 3 seconds a lap slower. Unbelievable. Well, let's join our pit reporter, Hayley. She is with the teammate of Stoffel Vandoorne. It's Norman Nato.
So I'm live with Norman Nato from Veloci Esports 2 team. Stoffel is currently doing a fantastic job leading this 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual. So firstly, Norman, where are you going to be? Were you watching and going to be, of course, playing from?
Well, I'm with Stoffel in Monaco. Monaco is doing an incredible job yesterday in qualifying already. Qualified the car in P6 in the middle of the game, so already was quite great. Still felt like it's more efficient. I have not much experience in gaming, so that's why Stoffel is a good help for me, and so far he's doing an incredible job.
Great, well, thank you very much, and good luck, Norman.
Thank you.
Norman Nato not only racing in this race, but of course our leading car in our safety car, which is the hydrogen-powered Project H24. He's also the test driver responsible for developing that car with a hydrogen fuel cell power unit and a 2-speed transmission. It almost sounds like the gas turbine BRM or one of the Halbets, or one of those weird and wonderful cars that sports car racing always throws up. And there is our race leader, Stoffel Vandoorne, hard at work in the office. Race leader Stoffel Vandoorne in his sim rig. You just saw Norman Nato walking around in the background after chatting to us online a moment or two ago. Martin Haven Alamanish and Chris McCarthy, our esports expert. Chris, it's been a great start to the race, and for this car, particularly the Veloci Esports car, they sort of worked their way up into the lead, ran away out front, but now they're being hunted down, so the balance of power is sort of shifting and swirling around. Utse Kirchhoff, one of the top pro sim racers, is now producing quick lap after quick lap, and he's bringing the margin down to our race leader Stoffel Vandoorne all the time. And this is a pattern we're going to see repeated, and so is this as well as in the real world, contact between battling cars.
I think that was the 98, wasn't it, that had a bit of a spin there, unfortunately, so they're going to be in for the pits. I do have to point out, though, Adsej Kirchhoff has only stopped twice, don't forget, after he had that off. And we were getting information in that he had a bit of an off at through sector 3, we think. He lost about 7 seconds in total through that sector alone. So we have Lewis currently trying to find out the full story of what happened there. But yes, Kirchhoff, he's not going to be, theoretically he isn't in second at the moment because he is due a pit stop on everyone else. So all the cars around have stopped 3 times. Gassner has stopped the Rebellion car that Gassner is in. He's a late entry into this as well. They've stopped twice, but yeah, we'll see Kirchhoff in the pits very shortly, I'm sure. But I think he's just at the moment trying to get the most out of that car as he can whilst he's on live fuel.
Yeah, riding on board with one of the 2 Jota entries, Mighty 38. This is Antonio Felix da Costa in the Team Jota Red Line car. Of course, Antonio racing with them in the World Endurance Championship. He's also a former GTE race driver as well, raced in the BMW M8s in the Super Season. Races also in the WTCR Touring Car Series globally. And another man who knows as much about Le Mans as it is to know is with Allan McNish right now.
I'm here with Henri Pescarolo, not only 4-time Le Mans winner, but also someone that took his own team to Le Mans as well and fought out, won the European Le Mans Championship. But Henri, you're one of the legends of Le Mans. And tell me a little bit about your history at the event.
That event, I'm really surprised because when
Henri,
Neveu
you're one of the legends of Le Mans.
I didn't want
tell me a little bit about your history at the event.
Stupid, you know? That event, looking at the organization, I'm really surprised because when Neveu
you're one of the legends of Le Mans.
I didn't want
tell me a little bit about your history at the
it
event.
was for the race, for the car and for the team, but for the public, which don't know exactly what is racing. Perhaps it's a good way to ask them to come, perhaps in September, to see a real race, you know. The organization is fabulous. I don't think it's very positive for the drivers because they are a lot slower than the gamer, which is quite surprising. It's not so good for the race because nothing could happen, you know, when you look at that. But perhaps that could allow a new public to be interested in racing. Why not?
Well, motorsport and certainly Le Mans has always been about trying to be connected with the fans, and so it does open up that opportunity. But you said about the drivers, motorsport, and when they have a chance of winning one of these trophies, then their minds will change, and then they will try and test and develop. Like a driver at the moment, every time they go to a new category, they have got to learn the strategies. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, you know, you are a lot younger than me. You know, in my time, there was no way to have a training without a car, you know. So now the young drivers are always on a simulator, you know. And something happened in the past, you know, to ask a gamer to become a real driver. It was not really possible, you know, it's so different. But for the young drivers, they look very good on that game, you know, because it's what they are doing actually in their team, you know. They are learning to set the cars on the simulator, you know, and so it's something which is usual for them, not for me.
Now get to the real racing. We're coming towards Le Mans in September, and that is obviously the reason that we're here today, is because this would when the normal 24 hours event would be. You have got such a long history there as a team owner, as a racing driver, and now as a fan? Or is it still a little bit of passion going around that circuit when you watch the race?
You know, a lot of people ask me what will happen in September, because everybody knew what happened with me in September. You know, I drive the whole night on the heavy rain without windscreen wiper. I said that will never happen anymore, because if that happens, there will be a safety car and there will be no more race, you know. And something, I think that is very bad, you know, because if you look at what we're doing Fangio, Schumacher, Senna, Prost on the wet, you know. That was fantastic, you know. No, you cannot race anymore, you know, because what will happen in September? Doing, I don't know, but Fangio, Schumacher is the same weather than before. They were wet, you know. That was fantastic, you know. No, you cannot race anymore. So what will happen in September? I don't know, but Fangio, Schumacher is the same weather than before. They were wet, you know. That was
You drove the whole night without a wiper in the rain at Le Mans with the top speed of?
The top speed was not so high, you know. It was there was no chicane, so it was 350 kilometers, you know.
Not so high. Not so high.
Because yes, with the Porsches we were 380, 85, you know, and but that was not the most difficult because when I spoke with other drivers, even with the windscreen wiper, it was very difficult. It was nearly impossible, you know, and. What happened, I don't know. It's a miracle, you know. It was just impossible. And I did it. I don't know why. God was with me, you know.
Well, congratulations on your 4 Le Mans victories and also what you did as a team, as a Le Mans legend, Henri Pescarolo.
Alain Moniz with Henri Pescarolo, and Pesca entered the race 33 times as a driver, and that still is a record. And in fact, it wasn't an uninterrupted run, 33 times in 34 years. 1 year he couldn't enter the race because he was still recovering from the burns that he still carries the scars of that happened in a Formula 1 crash. And that race he's talking about, he was in the Matra racing against the GT40s, and he brought the car back in after a night where at some stages he's talking about he was in the Matra, the rain was so racing against the GT40s, second place. In fact, they ended up finishing a very close second where at some stage GT40. And similar story 50 years ago when the Porsche of Richard Atwood and Hans Hermann won at Le Mans, the first outright win for Porsche. They were the 5th of 5 factory 917s entered. Richard Atwood was asked by the factory what car would he like. He went for the 3.7 litre, not the 3.9 litre engine, because it was better tried and tested and a bit less stressed. He went for a Kurzheck, the short tail car, because he didn't feel comfortable in the long tail. And that was not something that you should have got the best of out of Le Mans. And they asked, who would you like as the co-driver? And he wanted Hans Hermann. Now, Hermann had finished second the year before with Jackie Ickx, but that wasn't part of it. Hermann was the oldest and most experienced driver in the team, and that's why Atwood chose him. And they were the first of just 7 cars that finished that race 50 years ago. 1970 Le Mans 24 hours out of 51 starters. That's how wretched the weather was. And again, as Henri Pescarolo said, just a few years ago we started the race behind the safety car because the weather was so bad for racing, and had 2 hours of safety car running. Now, what the weather throws at us, nobody knows in the real world or in the sim world. Of course, one rule that we know from the film Le Mans from Steve McQueen is that it always races at Le Mans, and most years it always rains at Le Mans. Most years it does. Some years it really rains. Some years you just get a sprinkle. Who knows what the game has got in store? But we don't need the weather to jazz up this race. We've got a very exciting race on our hands. Watching Nicky Thiem again in the Aston Martin as he battles position here in the GTE class.
Well, what we definitely do know that it's going to get dark, and when it does get dark, it is pretty dark out there. I actually had a little run on the safety car yesterday evening, and the sun coming down into Indianapolis is right into your eyes as you're trying to roll the car into the right-hander, and it's exactly as it is. You know, what it would normally be in June, what they're going to have to go through when it gets to September. And so in that respect, I think that part of the night is going to be quite interesting, especially the dynamic of different people in different parts of the world. When everybody's in Le Mans, then they have to get used to that sort of change in their biorhythms. But if you've got, for example, Brendan Hartley in New Zealand, or the guys that are in California, Jenson Button, for example, then maybe they're a little bit more adaptable to it.
Yeah, it could throw you off a bit. And I was actually chatting to Jimmy Broadbent earlier in the week, and he was saying to me, he's in the GTE class, and he said this race is going to be won or lost during the night time because it can be very difficult to see the LMP2 cars coming up towards you. And he was saying it's going to be all about just avoiding the LMP2 cars throughout the night, and that could be very critical, particularly in the GTE class. Likewise, the LMP2 class, you could have drivers start to take silly risks in trying to get past those GT cars if they're being caught, or if perhaps they feel that they can make up more time. So it's going to be a critical part of the race, Ben.
Yeah, back with you for the next couple of hours as Martin takes a well-earned rest as we settle in now into the 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual. The first couple of hours always has this frenetic pace to it, and at some point you take a breath and everything settles in. The issue we have here, Chris, is we're seeing now the faster drivers getting into the cars, and a big tank slapper from our Malaysian car. He does make contact with the barrier. And who was in the car at the time? That's the car shared by Alex and Alistair Young in Malaysia. Alex Young was previously Formula 1 driver for Minardi, and his son is only about 16, 17 years old, I think, Alan.
Yes, he is. He's been obviously brought up in and around motor racing, and he's cut his teeth a little bit in karting, and now clearly is getting used to what it's like in the virtual world here. But that was quite a big off for the car, just down into Indianapolis, and the right-hand side, the right-hander lost it and then went in backwards on the left. A lot of damage, so that'll be back to the pits and in to the box for quite a long time for the repairs to that one. The Malaysian, it's an all-Malaysian crewed car as well, and so they're sitting in Kuala Lumpur.
And officially, that's the sim racer Mohammed Naquib.
Yes, you got Mohammed in that car as well. He actually recently raced in the Porsche Community Legends and the E-Racing GP Southeast Asia as
I should
well.
know that.
Yeah,
I commentated on it.
Oh, did
it's
you?
Embarrassing. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Obviously, he wasn't that high up the field.
No, obviously you weren't concentrating.
Or that, yeah. Absolutely. Just to let you know, if you are following our live timing, Chris mentioned a few moments ago regarding pit stops. Mathematically, it's impossible to have not done 3 stops. Yes. So we've got a few issues with the live timing, maybe not registering Atzi Kirchhoff's third pit stop, but everyone will have done 3 pit stops by now, at least 3 pit stops in the LMP category.
I've got to say, it's, you know, doing the 24-hour Le Mans is obviously my first experience of it. It's hard to know where to look, because once you get stuck into the timing screen, then you look back to the visuals and you've got a big off that's happened, and it's so hard to keep up with the race. But at the same time, it's just fantastic to see all these drivers out there. Now we're starting to see the sim drivers come in as well. And I've got to say, the professionals so far have done a really good job at matching their pace. We were expecting a big difference between the sim and the professional drivers, and that might happen later on, but it's been a fantastic so far just to see all the guys out there.
Bit of drafting going on there. You heard a little bit of a lift sitting into the slipstream. Was that to try and gain a little bit of fuel efficiency in that one? Because he was in a position where he could have easily, I think, gone past, but decided to lift and then just sit in the slipstream of the Corvette up ahead.
Yeah, and this is the battle for the lead of the race. So Tommy Usgaard in the Porsche Esports team, the 93 car, and he is following Erhan Yuyovsky in Romain Grosjean's Corvette, and clearly down the straight the Porsche has a lot more speed. Obviously it's gaining a little bit thanks to the slipstream, but clearly it looks like a stronger car. But Usgaard is happy to be sitting there and lifting off twice, I think, before the first chicane.
Yeah, and he's 8 seconds ahead of third place car, which is a Dempsey Proton number 88. And so in that respect, he is in a position where, you know, with the time to go, it's a case of just pacing himself. But I'm pretty sure if he did overtake, he could pull away by the looks of what he had there on the straight.
Erhan Yuyovsky, one of the best sim racers out there at the moment, Chris.
Yeah, Yuyovsky is, you've got to say, he's probably in the top 10 of sim drivers at the moment, and that R8G team is incredibly quick. They've got 2 very, very good sim drivers in that car.
And you can see there on the right-hand side, Tommy Usgaard as part of the Works Porsche team, concentrating hard right now. And this is the closest battle on circuit, the lead battle for GT. 20 GTE cars with us, and still a couple of our drivers from the real world. We've got Nicky Thiem up there in 5th position, although Thiem has a lot of sim racing experience, but it does look like the majority of them have now gone to their sim drivers for this next chunk of race.
Yeah, one thing going back to the lead team there, the RIG esports team, is Erhan and Risto. This has happened with a few cars. They've been teammates. They've raced together several times, and they've won together as teammates as well. And in the All-Star Series, you would know Erhan's name because he's had wins in that as well. So he's become a bit of a household name amongst viewers in the sim racing world. So they've also won the VEC Championship together as teammates of Erhan and Risto.
And with Daniel Juncadella and Matthias Besch getting into that car. Romain Grosjean, pretty new to the sim racing world. He himself doesn't do that much, but interesting that he's got himself involved with a team, Alan.
Yes, it is, but you know, there's quite a few drivers that have sort of evolved into that way